Okay, planning board, we are live. We are recording. Phone lines will remain off. Go for it.
Thank you very much. Good evening and welcome to the Town of East Hampton Planning Board meeting for July 24th, 2024. We have a number of matters on for site plan and sub-waiver review. And the first one on the list is 267 Accabonac Road. That's you, Ed. And Dan, you've got it. And is the applicant here? You'll have, well, the way it works is, have a seat. He'll grab you if you do the wrong thing. No, first we'll hear from the planning department, and then you'll have an opportunity to speak, and then the board will take up the application. So, okay, go ahead, Dan.
Thank you so much. All right. Great. Well, good evening. I'm the chairman of the planning board. This is an application, like you said, for 267 Accabonac Road. It is an application to subdivide approximately 1.2 acre lot, having frontage on Accabonac Road into two individual lots, one of which is approximately 28,621 square feet in size, and the other one is approximately 24,000 square feet in size. The site, just as a refresher, the site is zoned as B residence, is located with the Pine Barrens region in South Fork's Special Groundwater Protection Area, and it does not appear to be related to a previous subdivision and is considered to be partially cleared natural vegetation per the town's records. So the last time this was reviewed was at the March 6, 2024 planning board meeting, where there were several comments issued with relation to site access, clearing regulations, and potential proposed developments. Beginning this off, one of the first things we noticed was that during the previous meeting, the planning department indicated that there was a 50-foot wide scenic easement proposed in front of the along the frontage on Accabonac Road. However, since that point, we have become aware that this was actually already existing and it was required as a condition of the UR map that this was originally a part of. The applicants have since submitted documentation, reflecting this with the original approval and the original grant of the scenic easement, which we reviewed as part of the submission. So based on the documents that have been submitted, sorry. So based on what's been submitted, one of the things that we did notice is that upon visiting the site was that the scenic easement has been substantially cleared at this time. There's photographs shown within the memo, and it's also kind of indicated on the survey that there's only a few remaining mature trees in this area. There has been new evergreens planted along the property's frontage on Accabonac Road, but it's only along the front. So as indicated during the previous meeting, during this, we recommended a revegetation plan would be required for this scenic easement, in order to ensure its effectiveness as a vegetative buffer. It doesn't seem at this time the submission of this has been developed yet or submitted for review for the planning board or the natural resources department. So we recommend that this plan should be developed in conjunction with the proposed subdivision, given the conditions of the scenic easement requirement. Additionally, we also noticed that there was a small indication during the last review that the size of the scenic easement wasn't indicated on the survey, and that would be required for necessary in order to ensure compliance with the town code that's specified throughout the evaluation of this. Going on from this, the next question that the board raised had to do with the existing water supply systems and stormwater drainage. In previous review, these details were specifically indicated and the board had requested to be submitted. As part of this application, the applicant has indicated on the survey that the lots are to be serviced by underground public water and utilities, which we found to be appropriate. However, information for stormwater drainage doesn't appear to be submitted with this most recent submission. Again, just a reminder, as the applicant, this is something that is required based on the town code, which is reviewed, which is specified throughout the memo here. And again, recommending that this be submitted as part of this review. Now, in terms of the main talking points, at least from the last meeting, one of the biggest discussion points had to do with site access. Particularly, there was comments raised last time that the applicant should consider using Maple Drive, located the rear portion of Maple Drive, to service the second lot as part of this application. Now, it doesn't seem that a response to this was directly submitted for this as part of this application. However, given the concern that brought up, we did contact the applicants who have provided a response to this, which is highlighted in the memo regarding it. We'll go into details of this very soon. They've also revised the plans, though, giving their assessment of it to include a 20-foot wide access easement coming off of Acabonic Road. They've also indicated that the existing driveway for the first lot here is going to be abandoned, so that both lots will be serviced by the common driveway proposed here. So with respect to this current configuration, the planning department didn't have any objection to the present access configuration shown here, particularly given with respect to the Maple Drive. I'm going to pull up here what is this is the existing urban renewal map that this was a part of. As you can see, that this portion of Maple Drive is what's currently indicated as to be abandoned, but is going to be reclaimed as part of this, is proposed to be reclaimed as part of this application. If I show the proposal of what they're proposing to amend, you can see here that this rear portion of Maple Drive is already indicated as to be abandoned as part of this. So this would require an additional UR map modification in order to service this second lot here. It would also require a changing of the access point, from Acabonic Road to this additional portion of Maple Drive. But the last notion of this was that this essentially providing access here would potentially prohibit this property owner from the adjacent lot from potentially reclaiming that as part of the UR modification of their own, as there would now be a new access point from here. So with these kind of considerations in mind, the applicants, who've also indicated this within their response to us, have indicated that they would like to propose the common driveway from Acabonic Road instead, and we have no objection to it, given the particular extensive modification that may be required in order to do this rear access point. So with this in mind, if the planning board comes to agree that the current present access configuration is appropriate, they should discuss whether or not to refer the application to the town board for a review for the UR map modification. As we indicated, this modification will require modification of old file map into the two lots. In order to subdivide this one parcel into the two lots proposed, it will also require claiming a portion of Maple Drive in order to provide access to the proposed lot 2 and the additional lot 1. Finally, just as a future point of reference, if the common driveway is going to be proposed, we did want the applicant to be aware that there, a common driveway plan to, that meets the town code requirements for common driveway should be submitted as part of this application. But again, this is once final details are confirmed with respect to this. Finally, going forward with respect to the driveway itself, we did want to make, the board aware, the discussion that during the last review, there were public comments received regarding the present location of the common driveway. Particularly, there was comments received about providing potential buffering between this lot and the adjacent lots, which the planning board had generally supported throughout this. So all of these comments were received, and the board was in favor of this. The applicant, in their email response to us after we discussed with them, indicated that there was no, they don't not intend to provide landscaping for the neighbor at this time. And basically the main point is the planning board should discuss whether or not they find the applicant's response to be acceptable, or if there's additional details should be provided with respect to this, given the public comments that were received. Finally, as we indicated previously, again, the scenic easement area does require, and generally speaking, the scenic easement area does require some kind of revegetation. There was a request last time that we would go out and verify the clearing limits of the property, given what was shown in the survey. It does seem that this was pretty accurate based on the site visit that we did conduct. However, again, just basically the covenants that exist, there's revegetation required here. So in conclusion, we did find the application to be incomplete pending submission of additional details with respect to the common driveway, water supply, sanitary systems, and the revegetation. However, the big talking point was kind of the noting that the urban renewal map modification is from the town board will be required to facilitate this if the planning board is satisfied with the common driveway from Acabonic Road and concurs with the appropriateness of the subdivision. The application can be referred to the board to review the UR map in conjunction with this review tonight.
Thank you very much for that thorough report. Now, it's the applicant's opportunity to speak. Name, please, and your
Elliot Fisher with Tarvin Lester for the applicant.
welcome.
Thank you. So, like this map that is shown up here is not the most recent submission that we have. We had one that submitted a couple days ago, which actually does show a proposed common driveway and dry wells, as well as drainage calculations on it. So that part has been addressed. We have no problem submitting a scenic easement revegetation plan in conjunction with the Natural Resource Department. Let's see what else there was. Yeah, so the water supply and sanitary system. There's nothing on the from the planning department that suggested that we needed to show any of these sanitary systems, and the body of this memo just comes up in the conclusion, and we don't have any new ones proposed. What's there is there now. We don't have any new home proposed. So, not sure.
What is the system that's there currently in the existing house?
It's just an original old septic system.
Cesspool or?
Yeah, cesspool.
Okay.
As long as that can.
You should double check that.
Yeah, that's important.
If it's a cesspool, you'll be forced to upgrade that probably for the subdivision.
Okay. And yeah, we have in the UR map modification, actually had it in since last August. So that's covered as well.
That first bit, do you have the changes on the map that council indicated?
If I can,
Yeah.
Tina Lagren for the planning department. The memos get done the week before the meeting, so if you submit something that week, it would never make it into the record for that meeting. I think we corresponded a few times, asking for updates from you, and then we went with what we had based on the original submission and the email. So if we do have this in the file, which I'm sure we do, we have not reviewed it. The engineer has not reviewed it, so it wouldn't be worthwhile for us to study it here. We haven't had the time to analyze whether or not the calculations are appropriate. So that will have to be another future review.
All right. Anything else?
That's it.
All right. Ed?
Okay, well, obviously there are a few things that still have to be addressed. Dan brought most of them up in his excellent analysis of the situation. Thanks for submitting. You will submit a re-veg plan for the scenic easement,
Yes,
as you said,
I will
right? So
do that.
that's obviously really important. Having the easement on the survey is important. The stormwater bit, we've got to have that as well.
Yep,
That is
that's
a
covered in
requirement by
the
code.
survey.
Details on the common driveway. I am very disappointed about the outcome about the Maple Drive access, because we thought that was a really creative solution that we liked very much. But but I understand the difficulty of a UR map modification. The town board has to get involved. There's a neighbor whose consent we have to get. It's a very complicated process. I think the common driveway is fine. It's one house back there. It's not going to generate that much more traffic on Accabonac Road. I think it's fine and not worth pursuing the other alternative as much as we liked that alternative. I do think, though, it would be a very neighborly thing to do to consider some kind of screening on the first part of that driveway. It's something that people typically do when a new common driveway from more than one house is being constructed. It's a nice gesture. We can't mandate it, but it's something we'd suggest that you strongly consider doing, putting some kind of screening and vegetative screening from the neighbor. The sanitary system details, we've really got to understand what's currently existing on lot 1 before we can move ahead with the subdivision.
Okay, well, I'll get that submitted and figure out what's there.
Okay. That's it.
I agree completely that it's be a fine gesture, put some screening there. But do the back of these houses have fences already, though? Do we know that? Of the houses, I guess, south along those houses, do we know if they have fences back there or anything? Like, is there existing screening?
Yeah, we try to.
It's a good question. I don't know.
Doesn't appear so.
Yeah, so,
I looked on Google earlier and it just looked like there was a few trees in between, but no fencing.
okay.
You know, I would say one thing also. These are urban renewal lots. They're not the biggest lots in town. And there are certain advantages that the owner gets by it being an urban renewal lot, particularly at the time of subdivision. So, you know, while Ed's right, it's kind of a nice gesture. I think it's kind of more than a nice gesture. I think it's in keeping with, I'm no expert in urban renewal lots, but but I do think I would get an endorsement from those who do know that they are smaller than the typical lot and that there are advantages to them, especially up here on Acabonic Road. So I would join with Ed and Mike and whoever else would be joining in on that.
I agree. Ed made all the good points. Agree with everything he said. The only thing that I would ask is, since you're going to be revegetating the scenic easement, would that be a time and a place for you to create a buffer as you're doing that? Because you are revegetating an area that borders those lots below you.
Right.
So
I
couldn't that
definitely-
serve two purposes?
Definitely.
You're revegetating and creating a buffer at the same time?
Definitely makes sense, especially
Yeah.
in
That
that.
was my thoughts.
Yeah.
Exactly what I was going to say. I mean, you
You do it.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're already having to revegetate that front section, which is exactly where the house is right next to it and would like a buffer, so.
So what type of a buffer would you look for, like a fence or?
I don't-
or-
No,
Vegetation.
vegetation, yeah. I don't think you need to put up a fence, yeah.
I think we have a list.
But I don't have anything else to add. I think everybody else.
Yeah.
And emphasis on the septic system.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
that's a significant issue.
And I just have one, there's no second house planned at this time, right? Okay.
Septic.
Yeah, the septic system really.
That's true.
All right, so should the applicant develop a revegetation plan for the scenic easement that meets town standards and submit it to the Natural Resources Department and Planning Board to review?
Yep.
Yes.
Should the applicant revise the map to include calculations for the size of the 50 square foot scenic easement area in order to ensure compliance?
Yes.
Does the planning board agree that additional details should be provided pertaining to the stormwater drainage for the proposed subwaiver?
Yep.
Yes.
Does the planning board find the present access configuration off of Acabonic Road to be appropriate, or should alternative arrangements be provided in order to service the proposed subwaiver?
Acceptable.
Acceptable.
Reluctantly acceptable. Okay. If the planning board finds the access configuration appropriate, does the planning board wish to refer the application to the town board for review of an urban renewal map modification while the subdivision map and application continue to be developed?
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's what you get here. Should the applicant submit the requested common driveway details and engineering plans as specified by the planning department once final access configuration is confirmed?
Yeah.
And finally, does the planning board find applicant's response to the received public comments to be acceptable, or should additional details be provided with respect to the comments received?
It was only about the screening, is
I
that?
think that's the only comments we got, were about screening, right?
Yeah, I think we're on that, right? Talked about it.
All right. So, what's the consensus on that? Yes? Yeah.
I think we
All
should.
agree? Okay. There you have
And then
it.
do you
So
want to
we'll
add
see you
anything
again.
else?
Thanks so much.
Well, what, that we recommend or suggest about the screening?
No,
The septic.
the septic.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Was that not in here?
That
don't
was
think that was in there.
Well, then what?
We need details of the septic.
Yeah, we need details on this specifically about if it's a cesspool.
Right.
We need to know that. We really need to know.
Question 3. Yeah, okay, definitely.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I meant to mention at the beginning of the meeting, we get requests for adjournments, and there's a general rule about Monday at noon that the adjournment shouldn't come in, and we try to adhere to that. But if there's a medical issue of some sort that an applicant or counsel or somebody has, and it comes up, please specify that. And, I mean, we're not here to, put anybody through a hard time or create difficulties. If we don't know specifically that there's a medical issue, we can't, we try to be, as courteous as possible, particularly when there's a medical issue. So if there is, please bring it to our attention. And, we do our best to accommodate on that. All right, the next matter is the 522 Westlake car charging station.
552.
Did I say 552?
Oh, it says 522 here.
552 here and
Where's
that?
522 here. Well, I'm going to go with the report.
Yes.
We'll ask the applicant, actually. They'll tell us where their property is.
52?
Okay. Is it 552?
Yeah, it's fine.
Thanks very much. Okay. Bruce, this is going to be yours. Okay. Dan, it's yours also.
All right, so this is a preliminary site plan application to construct 2 new electric vehicle charging stations and additional EV utilities on the existing parking lot in Montauk. The 2 new EV charging stations are to provide electric vehicle charging for about 4 spaces here, which would be to 4 existing parking spaces, which are to be converted to EV-only charging spaces as part of this application. The site itself is about a half-acre lot on Westlake Drive in Montauk. It is zoned within the Central Business Zoning District, and is located within the New York State scenic area of statewide significance. There is also, in terms of what's existing, the prior site plan special permit review was granted in 2002 for the construction of a 2-story multiple business complex, about 2,600 square feet for the first floor and 1,348 square feet of the second floor, containing 3 retail uses and an accessory apartment, all of which have been CO'd at the time of this most recent review. So in terms of the, beginning issues, upon the formal submission, the planning department recommends that this project is classified as a type 2 action pursuant to SECRA and Chapter 120 of the Town Code. The specific scope of it is defined within our memo. However, given it's a minor accessory structure, it seems to qualify for the type 2 action. In terms of review history, obviously we already kind of began with it a little bit in terms of the background with the multiple business complex. It's been approved. There was a small modification subsequent to this for additional ADA compliance and stormwater drainage. However, and there was also additional interior work that was done. However, all this does seem, like we said, to be CO'd at this time. So in terms of the project itself, it doesn't seem there's any further review required outside of the scope that's been presented from the board today for the charging stations. So to begin kind of this off, as we stated again, this is considered a preliminary site plan application, which the town code kind of, specifies is meant to enable the applicant to examine forthcoming site plan submission without the effort or expense towards the plans and detail necessary for a formal submission. Accordingly, we recommend that the planning board provide its overall comments with respect to the overall development plan, including the layout, the proposed uses, the accuracy of the parking, and whether the project is proposed in interest of good planning, generally speaking. We did want to make the applicant aware, though, that upon the formal submission, we do have detailed requirements that would be required to our necessary elements of the site plan, which were included as part of the memo, but are also available in the town code. That would just have to be complied with, as going forward. Again, all right, so in terms of the project itself, again, with the EV charging stations, we reviewed it in terms of the code, in terms of the existing use. Again, this is considered to be a multiple business complex, including 3 retail spaces and an apartment. It is a special permitted use within the CV zoning district. However, it doesn't seem that this project would qualify as a substantial expansion. So at this time, so it doesn't appear that an additional special permit will be required on that front. However, in terms of the project itself, something that we are recommending is that, upon the formal submission, that they should discuss, the applicant provide a project narrative kind of describing more of the purposes and development of this project. Specifically, discussing any anticipated changes to the site operations associated with these charging stations. Again, as we said, there's existing commercial operations on the site that require the utilization of the existing parking spaces. And one of the things that we think, recommend should be clarified is whether these charging stations are anticipated for the use by existing site users or for some other function. Again, if additional functions are, potentially proposed with this, additional parking and other considerations might be triggered as part of this process and review. And this kind of seems to be one of the bigger, talking points of this application. So in terms of the project itself, and I'll pull up the actual site plan so you guys can see. You can see again the two EV charging stations and the additional structures on the side, which are, and to support these structures. In terms of the actual, proposed location of these, one thing that we wanted to make the board aware is that the Central Business Zoning District that this is proposing requires 10-foot setbacks in the front yard, 25-foot setbacks in the rear yard. Based on the plans that have been submitted, it does look like that these charging stations are going to be proposed within these boundaries. There is a survey which, I guess this one doesn't indicate, but it indicates that there's about 10.7 foot setback here, and these stations are proposed within that. So, based on the plan, so it doesn't meet the setback. However, although this could typically require a variance in order to be approved, it's also noted that there's other town codes that give the planning board the authority to waive accessory structure setbacks, and the planning board should kind of consider whether or not this is appropriate for this case. Particularly while discussing this, we recommend that the board takes into consideration that these are going to be installed directly adjacent to the existing lot. Again, they're not likely viewable from public vantage points on Westlake Drive. However, it does seem that they may be viewable from the adjacent residences. There's a few photographs in the middle that kind of highlight this. So something that may be, discussed during this is potential proposal for additional vegetation or other kind of screening measures. But overall, it's our recommendation that the charging stations are not anticipated to be intrusive to the surrounding community or incongruous with the site development overall. Additionally, going forward, in terms of the parking itself, obviously, as we said, that as part of this application, they're proposing to convert 4 existing spaces into EV charging spaces. They're also proposing to kind of reconfigure the site layout a little bit with respect to the parking. Based on our review of the site plan that has been approved for the property, what's proposed, it appears that it does seem to comply with the previous approved plan. There's 20 spaces proposed here, which originally included 19 regular spaces and 1 ADA space. This plan also includes 20 spaces with 1 ADA space, which is down here. There's 15 regular spaces, and then there's 4 now going to be designated as EV charging only. However, given that it does appear to meet the requirements, however, we did note as part of this, this is something that should technically be supplied by the applicant upon the formal submission. The requirements for the retail space, residential apartment it's 1 space per apartment. However, the retail space is based on the square footage or the gross floor area of the size of the retail space allocated. So, it's something that should be clarified and presented as part of this application. As you mentioned, the bottom of the specific code that references this, other things that should be include the actual dimensions and setbacks of the electric vehicle charging stations, the parking spaces on the plans, in addition to the dimensions of the navigation aisles throughout this space. Finally, there was a comment about the applicant indicated within a memo that there's going to be a new 16-foot light pole installed for the charging station, which will be illuminated around this area. However, it doesn't appear that there was additional details provided with respect to the site lighting in terms of specifications, the shielding, and other requirements. So we are recommending, upon formal submission, that a comprehensive site lighting plan should be submitted, which includes most of the requirements submitting detailed throughout the memo, which also includes specification sheets and the requirements laid out. Finally, we did note that upon formal submission, that this is something that would also require ARB review, because again, it's a change in commercial structure and requires site changes that would require review by the ARB. And finally, that the fire marshal did review this plan on April 26, 2024, and indicated that there was no information was sufficient and there's no further review required for fire protection purposes. Overall, as part of the one-time review of the preliminary site plan, the planning board should offer their, inclusion, planning board should offer their feedback on the overall development program, including proposed uses, proposed site layout. Important feedback for this application should include whether the planning board agrees this application would be appropriate for accessory structure setback waivers and whether the anticipated use of the charging station is consistent with the current site usage or would add more users. That's what we have.
Thank you for another thorough report. Appreciate it. The applicant. One, both, your call. The time, seriously, the time is yours. Just let us have your name and your address.
My name is Mark Ruscher, Wood Hollow Contracting. My address is 815 Nassau Street, Belmore, New York. This is far over here. No, I was kidding.
Well, you state, the southern state, all the way out.
Yeah. So I'm Nicholas Gasparo. Same thing, Woodall Contracting, 333 Woodall Road, Great River.
Oh, he's closer.
A little closer. So, the screening for the neighbors, definitely interested. We're planning on doing that. We kind of figured that we were gonna come here first, talk, see what the initial feedback was, but we were anticipating that there's gonna be some vegetation to, beautify the site. So that's not a problem. Obviously, we were aware of the setbacks. We're hoping that because it's EV charging, it's, something that has, it's an energy efficiency thing. It's something that the community could use, that it would be thought of as a positive and be considered that way as far as being within setbacks. I think the light post is definitely not within 16 feet. That was an error. We were thinking actually something more like maybe a lamp post of some sort, just something for safety, which obviously we would attach spec sheets, photometrics, whatever you guys would need.
In regards to the ADA, we keep the one handicap spot that's already involved with the site. But we also put in compliance one ADA spot with the EV charger to try to make that possible for somebody who is handicapped and needs that ability to get to the charger to use it as well. That's why you see the hashing in between the first charger. In terms of time and use, we think that the people that are using the store as a patron are going to use these chargers. These are DC fast chargers. They're level 3 chargers. For that being said, on a lot of commercial spaces that we do them on, you're charging your car in a lot less time than most chargers you're used to, like your level 2 chargers. You could charge a car right now at about 25, that battery at 25% to a 75%, 90% charge in 15 to 18 minutes. So somebody who's spending that amount of time in that store or in that retail space probably is going to be sufficient enough to use their car to keep going. The gentleman actually brought that up because of the traffic. He doesn't want to add more traffic to it. That's also why we're only doing 4 spots. We're trying to keep it, as low key as possible. To be completely transparent though, it will be shown, yes, you don't really see it from the street, as said from this gentleman here, but it will be publicly viewed online. So if somebody goes, because the software that's in the charger will tell somebody when it's available. If somebody's driving and they're part of PlugShare or PlugHub, whatever they're on, they'll say that this DC charger at this Montauk location is open. It'll tell them if it's active. It'll tell them if it's inactive. Yeah. So that also will help with the traffic control, because if it's somebody's there already using it and you can't pull up and use it, then that also helps with the traffic control as well. Because we do a lot of these in New York City, and that's one of the biggest things that the DOB looks for, because traffic there is a whole other story. From a vegetative standpoint, we can, like he said, we can adjust that any ways possible. The biggest thing, like he said also, was we thought that it was an accessory structure. So that's why we didn't think the setback was a problem.
Very good.
The other thing is we already met with PSEG to make sure that this was actually doable. That's why the red line actually shows a boring that would happen from the front corner of the property, from the existing utility pole that's already there. From that pole would go to a new transformer, to a pad, and then underground would be bored to a new transfer slab that would power all that.
Are you going underground the entire length of the parking lot? So it's not an overhead?
No, it's not an overhead.
There's no overhead.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So you see people coming in for a 15, 20-minute charge and like they would be in a store?
Yeah, we've actually installed about 6 of these already for Target all over Long Island. And when I say all over, Westbury, Setauket, South Setauket, They're seeing that their patrons, by the time they're coming out from a store, that because we have studies within the software that tells us approximately how long that car was there, because that's how you get charged, obviously. So it's about that on average. It's about 15 to say 20 minutes.
But that's not to say you're thinking of putting a target there, right?
No.
I've never gotten out of Target in 15 minutes.
I don't really think most people are gonna spend 20 minutes at a liquor store, but you never know, it could be a good party.
What are the other retail uses in the building?
It's a liquor store? I'm not sure. There's two retail uses, right? There's a
It used
liquor
to be
store,
the-
there's a resident pub.
Salt caves, yeah.
Oh, it was the Salt Cave
It was the
building?
Salt
Yeah,
Cave building.
no, I know you used to have the salt caves,
You're in the
but,
Salt Cave for a lot more than 15 minutes.
That's no longer there.
yeah,
I'm not sure.
so you're not sure?
I'm not
I was just
sure.
curious if it was somebody staying longer.
I'm not sure.
There's really not a lot of other charging opportunities in the area.
Yeah.
That was why we're trying to think this is a good idea.
Yeah, PSG calls this community charging, which is it's a big focus now because they're learning that these corridor charges or chargers that are focused around high income areas potentially, it's leaving some people without opportunities. So I mean, we call this community charging because it is near residences, so it is making available for commuters and maybe people that don't have access to charging, renting, and so forth. So I mean, it could be a public use.
So folks who just pull up and charge,
Could be.
even though they're not going to the
Yes.
retail outlet.
So it's an app, is that what you're saying? Like, it's like an app?
Yeah, it populates also on like Google Earth, on Google Maps. It populates it has several APIs.
So what if an internal combustion engine parks in one of those spots? What if it's?
So that's on the, yeah, so you could make it EV parking only, I mean, or you could make it with we call it what's it called, an idle fee. So that the landlord, because he's gonna be the operator of the software, in this case, he's gonna be the owner, this isn't like a franchise, this is his own EV chargers. So he could deter people by putting an idle fee out there. So if you wanted to park there with your car and you're not an EV driver, he could ask for, a parking fee because you're taking up a space that he could otherwise make money on.
It's up to the owner to do that.
If in the software, if you're asking if there's an opportunity to
Okay.
do that.
Let's let Bruce
Sorry.
take over the reins.
Perfect. Thank you, Dan. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think this is pretty straightforward. I think there's a couple of things that we should sort of consider. Obviously, there's 2 charging stations going on the north side of the property that butt against the neighboring building, which is actually pretty close. From the pictures, there really is no screening. It's a chain link fence. So I think that's something we should probably think about. The units are very small. Yeah, on the north side. The units are pretty small in the footprint, but the 2 charging units, I think, are 6.5 feet tall.
You would know better than me. I think it's a little bit now.
They're,
think they're like 5.
no, he's pretty accurate. They're 68 inches.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's something we should consider screening, the north side.
Are they lit up?
So they have an LED it's a green LED. It's very subtle. It's really just more for safety use. It's not lit up. There are ones, I know, I'm sure you see Bayshore Mall has these, Electrify America, very bright. So no, the ones that we specified here are pretty much unlit almost.
And that light faces the parking lot.
It's like a halo above the charger and it's like a little LED green light.
All right, so I think that's another reason why we should consider some screening. There's 4 other smaller components going on the west side. Again, I think there's a setback issue there. There's no dimensions in the site plan or anything, but probably screening needs to be there as well, because I think that butts up against a residential property, and also there's only chain link fence there now. One of the site plans does say stockade, but from the pictures, the stockade's not, doesn't seem like it's there. I was just thinking about, other location, that west property line does sort of flare out towards the south, but I think your parking along the south is right against the property line, so that's probably not.
Yeah.
I think the location you picked is probably, the best of what you have there. Question about the 16-foot light pole.
Yeah.
hopefully.
Yeah, it's not,
Okay.
that wasn't planned.
Other question I had was noise. Do these,
No.
you have transformers, do they produce noise?
The utility transformer, on this load, I don't think there'll be any, I mean, I could get you an actual decibel reading off of it. I would say that there has to be some kind of noise out of that. It's gonna be almost, the charge is nothing.
Okay, I think that's something we should probably
Get it?
review or get some information on.
Sure.
And the last question I had was, it looks like you're reconfiguring these 4 parking spots. So right now you have, on the site plan there, it looks like 4 code compliant parking spots. You're adding an ADA or aisle to the one furthest west. I'm just wondering how that,
So there was, in the original site plan, there was just a leftover 6 feet approximately on the original, well, not the original site plan, the existing condition. It's a 6 foot it's just left over. So we wanted to capture that it's obviously not, maybe not an true ADA spot, but it's what we call barrier-free access to a charger. So New Jersey makes us do it, and it seems like a good idea. It allows you to get up to the charger.
so is that 6 feet extra, was that within the original parking layout, or is that just?
Yes,
Right now,
yes,
that hashing, that 6 foot hashing is against the building
yes.
currently.
Oh, so everything's
They
shifted.
just
Yeah,
shifted it.
nobody could
all
go
right,
in that
all right.
spot, so they just hashed
That's what I
that.
didn't understand, 'cause
Correct.
taking that aisle obviously diminishes that, that left parking spot, but if you're taking it back towards the
Exactly,
building, I think
yeah.
you've,
Yeah, so we're restriping that whole side of the parking
okay,
lot.
okay.
So if we look on it now, it's just like, it's kind of like a triangular or trapezoid
I see.
shape, yeah.
Okay.
And that'll be gone. That'll be parking space. Yeah, full.
That's all.
Anybody else? Okay. Anybody else have any comments, questions? Lou?
So where you intend to put these units, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a vegetated space right now, correct? And there's trees there. You're not moving those trees, are you?
There's not this, so no, I think there's one tree that's actually maybe red. What kind of tree is that? I don't know. I think there might be one tree. I mean, it's probably about this big and it's not in good shape. But I think if you look at it, it's the first, in the center of the first stripe. Yep, that right there.
Well, it seems that there's 2 trees that would be affected.
That's the only one, I was on site that I'm 99% sure there's only one tree that's actually gonna get removed, that is out. That's obviously that one's clearly in the way. I think all the other ones are, it's probably hard to tell from the aerial, but I think we could get more pictures for you, but I'm pretty sure nothing else is gonna get moved.
So will you be able, so the only way you could buffer these units from the residential homes is by erecting a fence? You can't do anything with vegetation?
No, I would probably do evergreens, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't put a fence up.
No,
I don't think I would put a fence up at all. I think I would do it all with trees.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so now that we know that the board and we're not, infringing on any new codes or whatever with the placement of the chargers currently, now we could do a full landscape plan showing that.
Yeah, because and it's not just the north side. To me, the north side wasn't as bad as
The west side.
affected as the west side.
Yeah.
Because the north side, that house is sort of the back of the house.
Building,
It's
yeah.
sort of, I don't think they even go there where, in this area.
Yeah.
It's not used by the residents of the house next door. But the west side is. So that's, to me, is more important.
Good point.
Also, people come and go and they, if they're coming in at night to charge up.
Headlights, yeah.
No, that makes sense.
And the other question I had, so there's 20 spaces there now, and that's exactly what is required, not one more or less.
Really? Yeah.
So,
Well, are we sure on that? Because it goes off the square footage of the retail space.
yeah, well, that's,
Yeah, that was part of that.
That's part of the calculations are in there, yeah.
so my question is, if you're going to eliminate 2 of those spaces, or actually 4 of the spaces, right?
Effectively.
So you're going to reserve 4 spaces for only EV charge use. That means that technically you only have 16 spaces for the retail and the apartment. So that, to me, I'll ask the planning department that question as well, but would that mean that they don't have enough spaces according to the code?
Yes.
If we don't mark it as EV charging only, if it's just, because if, truthfully, for his retail purposes, I don't think that he's gonna not want somebody to park there to go into his store because he has EV chargers. I don't think
Yeah, I
that's his
mean,
intention.
the EV charges that are in town.
Yeah.
Anybody could park there.
Right.
You know, people don't know that, but you don't need to charge an electric car to park there. You could just, so I think it would be necessary for you to do that, to let anybody park there.
So it really wouldn't be up to the owner of the property, the manager of the store, whoever it might be, to tell someone that they're taking the space that that business might otherwise be earning money from. So.
Yeah.
But they also said earlier that they would the owner could potentially charge someone.
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But the site plan doesn't allow them to do that.
Yes,
Because they need 20
exactly.
spaces.
And there's no delineation, there's no accounting in the town code for, and this is probably a Tina question, for EV parking versus regular parking. They don't count.
Yet.
They don't count as parking spaces.
Put that on the list.
Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry, thank you. So I think this is an important discussion. I don't believe our code addresses this level of detail regarding EV charging stations right now. Based on the calculations Dan was discussing, the last site plan required 20 spaces here for the retail uses and the apartment on site. If site users were using these EV spots, I would not think it was a concern, right? Because you would just say, you know, EV vehicles who come to these establishments have access to this. But because there's an app that directs folks, they may not be visiting these spots. Otherwise, I do think that sounds a bit like a new use to me on the site that has a parking demand, right? That's not accounted for. So I do have a concern that they would either need some kind of relief from the parking requirements for the retail uses to allow this to be present, or to add more spots. It doesn't look like there's sufficient space on site to add any additional parking stalls. So that'd be my assessment. I'm happy to kind of do a little bit more research with Nancy and the building, Nancy, the attorney, and the building inspector, just to be sure that that's consistent with how it's been handled in other establishments. Again, we have EV charging stations, but
on private.
I'm not aware that they've been allowed to kind of, you know, take over parking demand, or that they're all on this app. I mean, this is a kind of new matter we're dealing with.
Do we have others that are on private property or?
And so I don't have like an inventory of that. I mean, and what I'll say is that
I know we're on town property.
Yeah, right.
it sounds like a very useful aspect to the site operations. I mean, obviously, we want to encourage EV vehicles in town. Definitely not saying we don't want to do that.
My next question was, the gentleman was going to be, what are the economics of this? And you know, and it was really directed to what you brought up, Tina.
Yeah.
Is this another use? Is this something that the landlord is putting there so that he could make money on this? Or is this for the convenience of the customers that come into the stores? I mean, that makes a big difference.
Yeah, at first it's 100% gonna be a convenience thing. You know, the EV growth, I think, is a 7% or something like that. So there's a chance that over time there will be, you know, profitability in this. But certainly at first, this is, most of this is taking advantage of rebates and grants from the government to offset the substantial investment that you make. Because otherwise this would not be feasible without, you know, so he's taking advantage of a New York State grant to offset a substantial amount of this cost. He's still coming out of pocket a lot of money to put this in. So he's definitely not going to be profitable for at least a few years at best.
You know what you got, it raises one issue. What you do have there is, I don't want to get into whether it's a separate use or a separate business. That's an argument for down the road, so to speak. But the concern that I have is that basically what you have is a filling station. It's a gas station. It's not gas, it's electric. But it's going to allow people to come and go whatever hour they want. It's almost as if you're putting a gas station there because it's going to attract traffic, it's going to attract, more use of that property. And that's where the planning board gets involved, because traffic issues is it's our purview. And so I think we're going to need to know a bit more about the long-term planning that the owner has and the uses that it's going to be, that it has intended or intends to apply to this space. Because, all of a sudden, we're going to have, are we going to have, I don't know, are we going to have, 24 hours a day, people coming and going here to charge up their cars? And I could see where that would be the case, especially late at night. Somebody doesn't want to do it in the middle of the day, go take their 20 minutes at 12:30 at night, and then we start getting community impacts, also the purview of this board. So it's something else that we have. So we're going to need more background and more understanding. I didn't realize it was driven by an app, and so to speak. But if it is, then we should know how that works. And how does it work in other locations? Because this is not on the street. This is, off street. And, again, I'm not getting into whether or not it's a third use on the property, but it might be.
But I think, just to add to that, Sam, I think it's important to know the economics of it, because if the landlord is putting it in to entice customers to come to the property, that's one thing. If he's putting it in to get a return on his investment because he gets a cut of whatever the charging client pays, that's a different thing. To me, that would be a different use, a different revenue stream for the landlord. So I think that's important that we know that part of it as well.
Jen, I cut you off.
No, that's okay.
And then,
My question has more to do with the town's commitment to going electric. So are there currently in the works any incentives for property owners to do this, like the town has done for septics? Because I know there is a bigger, broader town discussion about, going electric. So I just wonder how this fits into that.
I'm not aware of that. I don't know if you gentlemen had in your research. I'm not aware.
We dug pretty deep, we didn't find anything. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but.
Yeah. I will double check though.
Yeah, I'm
with
curious
the
to think
appropriate folks.
if that, curious to know if that's,
That's a good question.
a thought, because there is the big initiative to go electric.
The charging stations are universal, so a Tesla can't charge there?
No, a Tesla can, any car can.
Any car can?
Yes.
And just what is like the worst case scenario of a car that's at a 1% and it's a type 3 charge? How long would it take to get it to 100%?
On the proposed, probably 40 minutes. I mean, I'd have to actually run the actual calculation, but 40 minutes, 45 minutes.
Pretty good.
That's not bad.
My suggestion would be that you really think about the story, like what's going on that property right now, like the retail uses. Does that parking lot get completely full? I mean, I think the owner should just give us some idea of what's actually going on in that parking lot. Because sometimes we put these parking restrictions, on these properties and you see 2 cars there, but sometimes they're completely full. So it'd be good to know like how it's working right now, that parking lot, and what the flow
but
is.
you've got a vacant space.
Yeah.
What used to be the salt
Salt
cave is no longer there. I don't know what else might
And
go
yeah,
in there.
what is it going on in that building? That's what you should tell us. What's going on in that building? What kind of businesses are there?
Yeah, provide some kind of narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
But that doesn't mean that it wouldn't change in the future.
It doesn't.
No, it doesn't,
But
but
at least
it's
it
kind
can
of a-
give us a starting point.
But it's not where someone's going to go park, if they're going to the Cosmans, you know what I'm saying? It's where it is. I'm just saying it's not, it's sort of,
You can't relax the parking spaces based on what's going on there.
but we can make a decision on that.
You can
We
guide,
can
you
relax
can
it if we
guide
want
whether we're going to be alarmed at the possibility that you're
Yeah.
going to have what used to be a 20-car parking lot now becomes a 16-car parking lot.
Yeah.
That's going to be informed in our analysis.
Just information, that's all.
What's there. Tina, did you have something you wanted to raise?
Right, so I mean, I think if we do consider this a new parking demand, The things that I would like to see are a confirmation of what the site usage is now. You know, Sharon, to your point, we utilize the old site plan to estimate the parking calculation. I don't know that the uses haven't changed. Sometimes things do turn over. If there's a potentially less intense use in one of the spaces and they had available parking to accommodate this new demand, I think that would be something very valid. Absent something like that, with a new parking demand, the worst case scenario is that they would need a parking variance, right? They'd have to go to ZBA and represent that, you know, there's the need for this and they don't need the parking. And that's where the data on the site usage and stuff like that would be really pertinent.
Okay. All right, if nobody else has any questions, then let's move on to our question. Upon formal, I'm reading from the right one. Yeah, okay. Upon formal submission, should the applicant consult section 255-6-50 necessary elements of site plans to ensure the submission meets the requirements for planning board review? Yeah, seems pretty. Should the applicant provide additional details with respect to site operations of the EV charging stations, including clarification as to whether the EV charging stations are anticipated for use by existing site users or for some other function? Yes. And that's what we're talking about. You hear how that you need to amplify even as we have this, in terms of the uses, prospective uses, economic issues, things like that. Should the applicant revise the plans to include the distance of setbacks between each proposed structure and the adjacent property lines as requested by the planning department? Does the planning board have comments with respect to whether or not the proposed EV charging stations and additional accessory structures are appropriate for a setback waiver? Do we have any comments on that, folks?
I think with the vegetation, we sort of made a decision.
I think I'm okay.
Yeah.
And I think the applicant's also on board with that, which is good. Does the planning board have comments with respect to whether or not additional screening should be provided as part of the proposed development? You see these things? Okay. Should the applicant provide additional details with respect to the proposed parking area as requested, including the proposed dimensions and setbacks of the electric vehicle parking area, the methodology used to calculate parking requirements, and the dimensions of spaces and navigation aisles? I think that's pretty certain. And finally, should the applicant submit a comprehensive site lighting plan which meets all the provisions of the town code as well as the planning board's guidelines for exterior lighting? Yes. And I would ask that you give us a little bit more about the lighting on the units themselves.
Yeah. And then do you want to just add that the planning department will just confirm that there's no townwide programs that these gentlemen could avail themselves to make something like this happen?
We'll add that. The way this works is you'll get a letter from us basically laying out, this is what we're looking for, and that'll give you guidance. And as you can see, you can work with the planning department and if need be with the town legal office to come up with something that'll allow you to move forward on this. All right?
And I support this project too.
Yeah,
I have an electric car.
You're the guy at 1%?
Not a Tesla.
Not a Tesla.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and good luck getting back to Belmore.
Got a helicopter.
No, that's a whole different controversy.
Flying over my house.
Put a helipad in on that site?
You'll be here for 3 nights if you do that. All right, next is Scoville Hall. Mr. Whalen, is that yours?
I'm happy to go next. I'm just wondering if you should take Joel.
You know what? This is very kind of you, Mr. Halsey. Thank you.
Pinkerton?
Yeah, we'll do Pinkerton next.
Okay.
You sure? Yeah. All right. Okay, I don't want to, don't worry about you, Joel. Yes.
So which are we doing? Are we doing Pinkerton?
Well, no, Mr. Halsey's going to let Mr. Whalen go. Okay. Go ahead. You're on, you're on. Let's go. Let's go.
Okay, the screen is now shared. The property highlighted here, this is Scoville Hall located at 17 Meeting House Lane in Amagansett, New York. The present structure was built in 2016 to replace the original Scoville Hall, which burnt down in 2011. The original building was dedicated in 1925. And currently the building operates as a fellowship hall for the First Presbyterian Church of Amagansett and is available for rent for family and community events. The property is Zone B residential, and its current use is defined as a semi-public facility. The lot size is 27,645 square feet and contains a 2-story, 6,430 square foot building and 25 surface parking spaces, including 2 handicap spaces. So originally in 2017, a site plan application was made for several accessory structures. The applicant proposed to build a 1,050 square foot brick patio, a 6-foot tall fence with plantings on both sides, and a 64 square foot concrete dumpster pad, along with an 180 square foot well pit to house a generator. Also, the application proposed to move an existing shed, which has since been removed. Before getting into the changes in the application, I'd like to note that back in July 2022, an area variance was denied when the proposed terrace exceeded the max lot coverage. That has since been changed and a variance is no longer required. So the current site plan application has been amended with the request to be treated as a minor site plan pursuant to Town Code Section 255-645. The proposed brick terrace has been reduced in size to 270 square feet. The 6-foot tall fence has been specified as a wire fence, and the proposed landscaping is 6-foot privet around the proposed fence to the south and between the proposed fence on the northern property line and in the rear yard. The storage shed in the northeast of the corner, as I mentioned, has been removed. Let me just pull up the submission here so I can show you. So here shows the current proposal as it lies. The brick proposed terrace is 18 by 15 feet. And you can see the green privet outlined as well as the wire fence. The following structures and design elements have been removed from the proposal, and that would be the generator and generator well pit that were originally proposed, the concrete dumpster pad, and any new additional outdoor lighting has been removed from the application. So, as mentioned, total lot coverage no longer requires a variance. The proposal will bring it to 49.98%, which is below the 50% requirement. The application conforms with town code setback requirements, which are doubled in this case, given the adjacent residential property. Moving on to the issues of discussion, the project is classified as a type 2 action with the State Environmental Quality Review Act, so there's no need for additional analysis in that regard. And then moving into the necessary elements of a site plan, 255-650 of town code. It's noted that the applicant is missing a couple of qualities that must be submitted. However, the planning board does have the authority to waive these requirements for good cause shown. So firstly, the lot area and floor area for each floor of all existing and proposed building structures and uses should be provided. Just simply put, the proposed terrace should include the square footage on the survey, just as a matter of record keeping. Also, the layout of existing and proposed parking loading areas, including the dimensional spaces, aisles, streets approach, general circulation pattern, should be shown, as well as the methods used for computing parking and drainage requirements shall be included. So it's noted that although the striping is shown within the parking spaces, there are no dimensions for the spaces, the aisles, streets approach, and there's no general circulation pattern shown. There's missing drainage structure specifications, as well as the methods for computing said parking and drainage requirements, just for what's existing on site. Normally, with a resubmission like this, we would go over the planning board comments from the past application. However, the comments issued only related to proposed structures and design elements, which have since been removed from the submission. So there's no need to address any of the prior comments that were given to the planning board at the last hearing. Another issue for the applicant to note is that if there should be a resubmission, the project title, Scoville Hall Terrace and Generator, should be labeled on the submitted plans, as well as correspondence with the planning department and planning board. And then, as I mentioned, due to the small size of the proposed brick patio, the applicant is requesting that this qualifies as a minor site plan pursuant to section 255, 645 Town Code. The planning board may waive the holding of a public hearing on a site plan application, which meets each and every one of the following conditions, which I'll list. The structure does not require a variance from any provision of this chapter. The structure does not require approval from the Suffolk County Department of Health Services. The structure is not habitable and covers no more than 500 square feet in area. No additional parking is required under this chapter. The proposed structure will not create a visual deterrent to surrounding properties or to the general public and will not cause drainage problems, impede traffic circulation, or interfere with the proper overall planning of the site. And the application has caused no significant public controversy. I'd also like to note, although it's not in the memo, it's come to our attention that ARB is required per section 255, 730 for new structures, in particular the proposed fence and brick patio would have to go through ARB. So despite some missing requirements from the site plan, the proposed brick terrace appears to conform with town code. The planning board should decide whether to approve the application on the condition that the applicant provides the required details on the proposed terrace area and the existing parking and drainage structures. But per 255, 650 section of town code, planning board may also waive the requirement for the board before mentioned information to be submitted. We'll leave it at that.
Very well, thank you for that thorough report. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Whalen.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Richard Whalen. Today I'm wearing my landmarks hat. And I am here with the pastor of the First Presbyterian Church of Amagansett, Reverend Robert or Bob Griffin. He's just here to provide moral support.
Keep him in line.
I've passed this many times. I've been dying to see what it's like inside, and I'm
Now you know.
impressed. It's lovely. It's lovely.
We're always open,
Yeah.
just like a church.
Just for further information, I'm actually the clerk of the session being essentially the board of directors of the church. So I'm sort of the secretary to the board of directors in my spare time.
Don't think that creates a conflict for you.
No, I don't think so. So there's not, I don't think, too much to cover here. The main question are additional items that are requested by the planning department for the application, some of which are no problem, a couple of which I will ask you to waive. In terms of the square foot, a little bit of background. So originally there were more elements, as Christopher described, there were more elements to the project. That would have needed a total coverage variance. That was denied by the zoning board. And this went back to the session. The session decided, let's just scale it back and get the largest terrace that we can do, and other elements were removed. So that's how we're coming down to the 270 square foot proposed terrace. So we didn't state on there, there's 200, we do have the actual exterior dimensions are shown, 15 by 18, but we don't state the square footage, which we can do. That's easy, obviously. Likewise, in the parking lot, we're actually showing on the site plan the dimensions or the striping of the existing parking spaces. We can easily dimension the parking spaces and the aisle. Those are all things a surveyor can do without going out to the field. Once you're out in the site, now, that starts to generate a cost or a greater cost that we would have to bear. The terrace has no effect on the parking lot. There's no parking impact. It's not going to affect drainage. One of the requirements or elements brought up in the memo is, the drainage. There are a couple of drainage grates towards the western end of the parking lot near to Meeting House Lane. We're not really contributing to that. I don't know why we would have to go out and identify and then determine what the capacity of the drainage is, because it's not really I just don't think it's pertinent to what we're proposing. It's a 270 square foot, terrace, and you can see where it's positioned. So we would ask for relief from that. I would also mention too, in terms of the circulation requirement, if you're proposing a parking lot and let's say you have an island in it and there's a directional element to it, that's one thing. There's only one way into this parking lot and there's only one way out. And we don't have striping in the aisle. So I think it would be a little misleading if we were to put, in and out arrows. And it's only one way to get in, one way to get out. So I would ask for relief from that. And I'm not, some of the things that Christopher mentioned in the body of the memo are not in the questions at the end. But like I said, the things that we can put on, we can dimension the parking space in the aisle with, certainly put the square footage of the terrace on the site plan. Just two other things that come to mind. One is the title. Now I did put on my letter and on the survey, it's titled Scoville Hall Terrace. We had proposed a generator. That's not part of the project anymore.
Oh.
Do you still want, when you do your site plan resolution, you're going to title your resolution and generator, but there's no generator.
Can fix that.
So I think that would be a little bit confusing. The last thing that Chris mentioned at the end, ARB approval. Now a fence above it's commercial, well, it's not commercial, it's residential property, but the terrace itself is that great. I don't have my code in front of me, but my recollection is I don't think that great structure requires ARB approval.
That's correct.
Okay, I thought so.
The fence does though.
All
So
right.
it's 6 feet.
Okay, it's 6 feet? Are we 6 feet? Really?
That's what I believe, right?
Well, the hedge is 6 feet. The fence is going to be.
The fence is also 6 feet proposed on the plans.
You might want to reduce that. If it brings it to 4 feet, we don't go to the ARB, we'll probably do that. I mean, it's basically a hedge, and I think they're going to put a fence inside there. So we'll look at that. That's not
Like
really
you're looking
your
to
purview.
keep things out with the fence.
Yeah.
It's more decorative than.
Yeah, it's not, a deer are going to be able to jump over the fence. This isn't intended to be a deer fence.
No.
So that's really it. I mean, most of the elements I described, we can put those on the site plan. And I think that's it.
Can I ask a question while Rick is up there? What is the purpose of the terrace?
It's for the room next to it's called the tea room. Mm-hmm. So there are doors that open up out there. It really comes down, there's a prior member of our church who, we would like, the idea when he passed away was to dedicate something to him. And so we would dedicate the terrace to him. But it would be, occasionally they've used that outdoor area. It's not used a lot.
Like a coffee hour kind of thing after church?
Yeah,
sort of
it could be a function. When we've done, I can remember one event where we actually had no music. We had like a local, quartet or something playing out there, and we actually had food, and that was just on the grass.
Okay, so
it's a couple things. It's not for commercial use. It's not for nighttime use. There's no lighting associated with it. You won't be able to use it after dark. It'd be for occasional use if it's a nice day and they want to be able to do something outside from the tea room.
If I might, I could add to that.
You come up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And that's okay.
Yes. Reverend Robert Griffin, the pastor of the Anglican Presbyterian Church. One of the good reasons for the church is we have, I would say it's a good way to put it, mature people attending the church. We have two 100-year-old ladies. There's no way they're going to go out from that tea room and navigate through grass and dirt. So one of the advantages of having that terrace is to have them go out. They could sit there, whatever it may be, have their lunch. So I just wanted to add that for you.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Bruce?
All right. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Rick. Yeah, I think this is pretty simple. The terrace, they reduced down about 800 square feet. It's pretty minimal, I think, on the site. It's not really seen from the road. Some of the other items that Chris brought up, I'm wondering if those were not included on the site plan that was done when the building got rebuilt, because it seems like
The building goes back, as Christopher said, to 1924, 1925.
No, but parking lot, I think, is new.
Right,
Just
so
wondering if
there's
some of that
no parking
infrastructure
calculations.
stuff was not included on the site
Yeah,
plan.
I think they put in as much parking as they could, as they came out.
I mean, I don't really think that we need to look at drainage or anything. I think that sort of makes sense. This is pretty minimal, in my opinion.
I agree. It does. Ordinarily, a site plan implicates all these other issues, but it strikes me as a pretty minimal, reasonable addition to the facility. So. Amen. There you are. That will end. I gotta say, that's gonna end the conversation.
There you have it.
We're done.
So we'll get back to you. We'll make a resubmission with that information. Thank you.
Will the planning board waive the holding of a public hearing for the minor site plan application? And this time I'm gonna say yes.
All right.
Oh, no,
I was gonna say no, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
It's the Amagansett Lanes. It's a new terrace. It's a new, I mean, I know that I understand where you're coming from about that, but
it's a good question. Actually, do you have, what's on the immediate,
You said that you're already using that grassy space though, right? So you're just making a hard surface on what's already a space that's being used.
yeah, I think people in the neighborhood are interested in what's
we
going
have
on.
something there at home?
Well, the manse is right to the north, right? So it's church property, right? But behind their houses, and there's a new house hard by the parking lot, as you can see there, right?
Well, they're the ones who took the hedge down between the properties.
I know.
Big hedge. They took
That house has been under construction for
years.
Yeah, for a while. They're doing a little bit of work on it now, I think. They're doing some work on it.
I gotta say,
That's it.
anytime there's a public hearing issue that involves a residence nearby or residences nearby, my instinct usually goes to giving the public the opportunity to say something. So I'm shifting over my opinion on this.
I am not.
I am not.
Okay, well,
And so, and I'll give you an example. So my daughter, when she was in the Girl Scouts, they would meet there and they would go, before there wasn't any terrace, and the kids would run outside and play and make all kinds of noise. So a terrace or no terrace, the kids are gonna be outside making noise.
I just like to plan this out of caution.
Anybody else on the public hearing?
No public hearing.
No public hearing.
No.
Okay, we're
There we
outvoted,
go.
Sam.
Now it's-
I'll just add too, we were putting a hedge around it, so you're
Yeah.
not even gonna see the terrace or the people using it.
So
Thank you.
now we will return to the questions, having resolved that vital issue. Does the planning board require the applicant to indicate the area in square feet of the proposed brick terrace on the site plan? And sure we will do that.
Blame it on that.
Okay, does the planning board require the applicant to provide details on the existing parking lots, including dimensions of parking spaces, drive aisles, and general circulation pattern with directional movement shown? And
He said he's gonna do the
I
dimensional
don't
stuff,
think we
right?
need that either. And we don't have anything about the drainage in this, but we can add that to the question and say no. So, there you go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and now the ever courteous Mr. Halsey. Stay there for just a minute. Tina's gonna go through this and then we'll get to.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna just get my report out and then we'll get started. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Tina again for the planning department. This is the application for Pinkerton Farm located at 92 Spring Coast Highway in East Hampton. Going to bring up the aerial image of the site. It's a very long property located off of Spring Coast Highway in Hampton. It's currently occupied by a farm stand and a farm. This site plan application is made to legalize the existence of a 681 square foot pergola and approximately 1,200 square feet of raised planter beds sited on gravel. I will now just show you the survey, site plan survey. Make sure this is the right one. This property came for site plan review based on a recent ARB finding that the pergola and the planter beds were not on the approved site plan, and then so they referred the applicant back to the planning board. Regarding SECRA, there is the recommendation that this is a type 2 action, and the category from SECRA is listed to support where it fits. Now regarding the review of the site plan. So the first section of the memo discusses dimensional compliance for the pergola. The applicant in their submission had indicated that the pergola had existed at least since 2013, and the planning department did review the aerial imagery. It does seem like there was some kind of structure where the pergola is. It's very hard to tell from the aerial imagery what it is. But it does appear that there was something existing there. It does, and the applicant has acknowledged that it has been reconstructed. It looks like it also may have changed shape. And there were some pictures in the memo that just showed the aerial imagery over time. Regarding the pergola, the major questions we have are just with respect to setbacks. There's no setbacks noted on the survey. You folks can see here, this is the pergola. It's located very close to the fence and the northern property line. So we would just like to see dimensionally how close it is. We tried to measure it. It's like 8 feet or maybe less. It's quite close. For this property, because it is not conforming to the width requirements for properties of this size, it does qualify for something called the 4/10 rule in the code. The code section is listed. That just means there's a different calculation to enable you to determine what the setbacks are for the lot, and I calculated them at approximately 8 feet. The applicant should, confirm those calculations and in a resubmission show where they are with respect to that, but I did want to note that they are eligible for that enhanced relief based on the narrowness of the lot. With respect to the setbacks, the planning board does have the authority to grant a setback waiver pursuant to, 1163, I believe, the citations in the memo, if they find, for accessory structures, if they find that that's appropriate. I'm just going to show some pictures of the pergola real quick, just to give the board a sense of what it looks like.
That's big.
Just the property line here is shown by this vegetation. So there is screening between the pergola and the northern property line, but it is quite close, as I mentioned earlier. So going on, and I'll stay with these photos for a moment. The planning department conducted a site visit last week to review this application and did notice that there were some additional structures present that were not noted on the proposed site plan. These include an outdoor shower, outdoor sink, portable restroom, and a camper. So our suggestion here is that the site plan needs to be updated to show all the appropriate structures, including their setbacks and dimensions. One thing to note, as an agricultural property, if the structures are smaller than 200 square feet, they may not need site plan review, but they do need to be shown on the survey and used to calculate the coverage to ensure that the coverage complies with site plan requirements, which for an agricultural property is a little stricter than regular. That's the next section of the memo, which explains it's 10%. So that needs to be updated and properly calculated. And then with the camper, another question that of course arises is site usage, right? How are these facilities being used with the existing farm? The next section of the report goes through the necessary elements of site plans. We reviewed the last 2 most recently approved site plans for this site, or 2 or 3 actually, and several of them were consistent in not requiring some information that is typically required. So the next and last section of this memo goes through each element point by point and provides the planning department's recommendations for those that are definitely required and for those that have been waived in the past and we don't see a huge need to require now, just due to the minor magnitude of what's being proposed in terms of changes. But basically, to sum that up quickly, all structures we feel need to be shown on the plans. The setbacks for the structures need to be shown on the plans. The coverage needs to be appropriately calculated. And I think those were really the major ones. The things that we felt less strongly about, there's no parking dimensions on the site, but there is a gravel parking area in front, which is lightly used and has been in existence for quite some time and has not changed. I don't see a huge need to do anything with that. Again, there's it's not shown as gravel, but it's gravel here. Perhaps that should be updated. But that didn't seem to be a major need. And then there is no stormwater drainage shown on site. Most of the site is not covered with hard surface. So that also does make sense. And the sanitary system is shown, that was recently approved by the board. So we are knowing that that is appropriately reviewed already. Lastly, the ARB would be required for the pergola if the planning board is accepting of its existence. And that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you for that thorough report. Mr. Halsey.
Good evening. Joe Halsey, on behalf of Lighthouse Land Planning, on behalf of Harry Pinkerton, the owner of 92 Spring Close Highway. And for those who don't know, I did get into a fight recently with my surfboard. Ended up injuring the same side of my face I injured 30 years ago in a rugby accident where I had titanium plates installed. All the plates had to be removed and replaced, and this is why you see me like this today. We are before the board, and sorry, I wasn't planning on coming here tonight. I put medication in my eye, so it's a little bit off on my left side. I would have done it later tonight, but it's all good now. So we are before the board. I guess if the board has any questions, I do want to discuss the coverage that was mentioned in the memo. It was mentioned that there is a long driveway that runs from the front of the property to the back of the property, and whether or not that would be considered coverage. It's not really, it is driven over per se, and sorry, I'm not looking up, I'm looking down because it's not driven over per se. It's driven over, but it's not technically, it is a driveway for all intents and purposes, but it's just dirt. And it's hard packed dirt from being driven over. It's not gravel covered. So whether that's to be considered coverage, I don't know. But if it would be considered coverage, that would significantly increase the coverage on the property, because as you know, this is a very long property, and I'd say it was approximately 12 feet wide by the width of the property and the length of the property. I will have the survey updated to show the 8-foot reduced setback, the setback to the pergola. And the property owner, Harry Pinkerton, just wants me to stress about what this property used to look like under the previous owner and what it is looking like now under his ownership. This property, and if you look at the old aerials from the site, this essentially looked like a junkyard at one point. There were boats lying around. There were just stuff lying around on the site. The site has been cleaned up. It is a very beautiful site at this time. I encourage all the board to go there and take a walk around and see what they see. There is a trailer that is used on the site. They use that to go in, to get out of the shade. It's kind of used as a quasi office. There is no bathroom in there. They go in there, they eat their lunch. And it's been there for at least 4 years, I believe Harry's told me. But again, it's aesthetically pleasing. It's not just some, ugly, piece of junk lying on the property. The pergola there has been a pergola on the property, since he took ownership of the property. The previous owner did run this as a farm. And now, if you could see, the pergola before was just basically 2x4s put together with nails. And the pergola is much more aesthetically pleasing on the site than what was there before. And then obviously you have the planter beds, which, it's much easier to grow plants in a planter bed than it is directly on the ground. Beyond that, I believe that's all I have to say. If the board has any questions, I'd be more than willing to try to answer anything I have for you today. And again, forgive me too, I also took medication too, so that makes me a little loopy for some reason, and it's not a painkiller, it's just I don't know what.
Doing good, Joe. Can I ask you a question about, what is the pergola? What's the purpose of the pergola?
The pergola is used for shade, and they are growing, I don't know, I don't believe it's hops, but they are growing, some sort of vine-like plant.
On the pergola?
Yeah, on the pergola.
And it'll cover the.
Yeah, that was really my main question, because that's really the structure that's up against the fence. And, and the residence is pretty far away. I did go there and it's pretty well vegetated. But there's seating and string lights and that kind of thing. I mean, and you're right, the property is beautiful. I totally agree with you there. It was, I would like to hang out there. The flower beds have flowers and vegetables and the pergola. But so just was curious if it was being used in a social way. The pergola.
I believe they sit there in the afternoon and they hang out. Regarding the string lights, I don't know about those. I'd have to discuss that with the owner and see what those are for.
So I would just be curious, what they're using that for, just to think about relaxing the setbacks, whether it's appropriate or not.
Okay.
I mean, that was basically, he sort of answered, obviously the coverage issues. And he said that, I was curious if someone was living in that trailer. He said no.
Is that a portisan next?
Yeah, unfortunately, we're still working with the county to get the sanitary permit, because the county is they understand there is allowable flow on this property from the subdivision. But they don't know where that flow went, where it's allocated to. And they right now we have three options. We can either get a Pine Barren credit, which is going to cost $50,000. We could re-subdivide everything there, which includes all the units there. Try to do, which I'm sure that's the last thing you guys want to see here. Or we can try to claim ags and market, which we're trying to work on that as well. Saying that they really, and essentially they need a bathroom. It's a working farm. And you don't really want to have a.
Is there a bathroom in the structure in the back of the property?
We got approval for a bathroom in there.
Okay, that's what you're saying.
But yes, the county's really, hamstrung us on this.
I got it. I haven't gotten it yet.
Yeah, gotcha. All right. So this portisan will not is not a permanent.
No, gosh, no.
Got that really cool camper and then a portisan.
I know. It doesn't fit with what's going on there. They have these beautiful painted sheds with like color. It's very sweet.
And we are trying to work something with the county, but they're just sticking to their guns. There's like 1,700 gallons of flow left from the previous subdivision, but they've lost the subdivision records, and they're putting it on us to determine to prove where that flow remains on those properties. And obviously, we have no record of it, and so.
I was curious, one question, Tina. So when you have like a trailer like that's movable, is that considered coverage?
I mean, if it's in one spot
and stays there
and not seasonal, I would say yes. And I did just talk to the building inspector about this the other day. If it's a permanent structure, even though you could move it, but you don't, if they took it off site all the time, that'd be a different story.
Right.
Okay. So maybe I'll ask if he can remove from site for the winter. I know he's got a property in Montauk.
That's an interesting question. That's up to the building department to make that determination?
The building inspector is the final arbiter on kind of matters of code interpretation. He's got that authority in our code.
What about the driveway?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you.
So the driveway, I did double check that, and I put the definitions from the code in because I myself double checked it to be sure. And if it would open, I would share that with you when it's ready. Because I don't want to paraphrase for something that's okay.
Doesn't a farm road have any special dispensation?
I'm not sure. I mean, that's something I could look into. For coverage total, it's that % of lot area covered by the ground floor of all buildings and by all other structures, including parking areas, driveways, and all impermeable surfaces, right? And then driveway, the surface of a driveway is, can be dirt, gravel, stone, or asphalt, right? So the definition of a driveway, doesn't matter what its surface is, it's in coverage. That's my interpretation, and I believe that's consistent with how the planning board interprets this across all the boards.
And we still don't know what the total coverage is.
No, they provided the coverage, but they did provide the note that it excluded the pervious driveway. And that's why it's so low at 3.3%. And my comment was that it should include all the buildings as well as the driveway.
Right.
We don't have that figure.
Yeah,
We don't, correct.
I'll have to get that.
but you're probably not in danger of being over.
Well, we're only like 10%, I believe, on the property. So that's a long.
It is rather long.
It's a long driveway.
True.
Does anyone have any other comments, questions, issues?
No, I think
There's only 3 questions. Should the applicant amend the plans to demonstrate dimensional compliance for the pergola and other existing structures that would require legalization through this application?
yes.
Should the applicant revise their coverage calculation to be consistent with town code?
Yes.
They all want that. Should the applicant revise their application to include necessary elements of site plan identified by the planning department as modified by the board during this discussion? And if you could find out about that question about whether the camber is a structure or not, I think that's going to implicate, not implicate, but impact.
So do you want to request a formal interpretation? I mean, I did just have this conversation. It wasn't about this site, it was about another site where there was structures that if they stayed in place all the time, they were coverage, but if they moved them seasonally, they would not be. I realize that's
So
just
maybe
a conversation.
Move them to one side of
Well, I
the
think-
property.
Yeah, I know, like,
Yeah.
No, like
back and
offsite.
forth, like
It's
alternate.
not like being in the Reutersham lot where you got to move from here to there to here. It's not like that.
It was moving them off-site.
Opposite side of the
Or
street.
to a storage location.
You know what, I don't
Only if
want
it's
to make it go
pertinent,
through anything
yeah.
formal, but just so that the applicant knows that
Yeah.
what they're dealing with.
This is a very small, I mean, I think, and I tried to measure it, and I hate small, it's like 100 square feet. I
You know,
don't think
the
it's
thing-
gonna make or break them.
I can think of any number of folks I know who have not a camper, but maybe an Airstream or something on their property.
Oh, yeah.
And it's there 50 weeks in the year.
They don't
And-
use it as.
Yeah, but for
right,
2
yeah.
weeks in the year, there it goes. So,
Right.
yeah, so.
Yeah, that is a good point.
All right.
Okay.
But just, look, and again, Mr. Halsey, thank you for coming in, and I hope you're
Feel better.
feeling better. Get home all
He's like,
right?
yeah, no worries.
Okay.
Andy was gonna come for me tonight, but then he
Yeah, I know.
wasn't able to,
All right.
so, okay.
We'll give him a hard time the next time he's here. Okay, thank you.
And I,
All right, let's move into the regular meeting, which has only got 2 matters on. First is a board of review, the request of Brett Harris for a building permit at 21 South Eden Street in Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-28-4-13. There's not a lot of work to be done, which reflects in the bond of only $12,000. Only bond of $12,000. Prune the shoulder area on the road on both sides of the roadway. And from the intersection of South Essex and North Faraday for 220 feet, and then install 1.5 inches of top course asphalt on North Faraday Street for 20 feet of width for 350 linear feet. I've read the report of review and I move for its approval. Second. All those in favor? Passed 7-0. Thank you. And the planning board minutes, I reviewed them and I move for their adoption. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes, 7-0. Okay, if anybody has, if no one has anything else, our next meeting is the 14th, I think?
yes, August 14th.
August 14th, so we've got, yeah. I know.
3 weeks.
Well, you know, when the powers that be sat there and made up the calendar, we said.
Summer vacation.
Miss each other.
So if we can get a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second? All those in favor? Aye. Pass 7-0. We're adjourned.